Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Tuesday night live stream for Week 11 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Over the course of the next hour plus, we're talking all things fantasy football related, whether it is a waiver wire question for later tonight, whether it is a trade question because you have your trade deadline later this week, or potentially a starter sit question going into this upcoming week's games. Of course, we have a Thursday night matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders. Should be an exciting one. Of course, there are still a couple players in terms of that game that we're not 100% sure as to whether or not they're going to play. Like specifically earlier today, when I did post the rankings for Week 11 at the running back position, I have no clue whether or not a guy like Brian Robinson Jr. is going to play. I almost said Brian Thomas Jr. Very close, but I don't know if Brian Robinson Jr. is going to play. So I ranked Austin Eckler there in the event in which, of course, Brian Robinson is able to at least log in some sort of practice. If he's going to be active in that game, then of course we'll play him. But outside of that, again, we're anticipating that Goddard and, of course, Devontae Smith, even though they're on the questionable tags, they're going to play. But as the week progresses, we'll get more and more information publicized to us, and we'll be able to kind of lock in our lineups. Of course, many of us are still trying to fight for a playoff position. If in fact you are also looking to do so and you have an upcoming trade deadline, make sure that you include your scoring format within your question, whether it is a standard, half PPR, full PPR, whether you send it in via the live chat or the super chat, regardless of any way that you send it in, make sure you include your scoring format because that'll definitely help in terms of helping me answer that question to the best of my ability. I appreciate it. Okay, so for those of you who are joining us, welcome. Hope you guys are all doing well on this wonderful Tuesday. Later tonight, I think starting right now, we have Klay Thompson and the Dallas Mavericks, the revenge game, taking on his former team, the Golden State Warriors. If I wasn't live streaming here, I'd be keeping an eye on that just to see what happens. But I'm sure you guys can keep me updated as to what he's doing within the game. Outside of that, happy you guys are here. Let's get into answering questions, shall we? First question of the day comes in from Spartan Warrior. Thank you, Spartan. Says, I'm currently 4-6 in a full PPR scoring format. Trade Josh Jacobs / Hill. Okay, so Tyreek Hill. I'm assuming that's not Taysom Hill, by the way. It's going to be Tyreek Hill. For Kyron and Ridley, I have Jacobs, Connor, Dobbins, and Hill. Chase, DK, Terry, Downs. I need to make the playoffs. Worried about Tyreek. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know I don't think that the solution to make the playoffs revolves around moving those specific pieces in exchange for that. I don't like the idea of trading for Ridley. I know he played incredibly well this last week, scored 2 touchdowns, one in garbage time, but one early within the deep ball. I don't know if I can sustainably trust Will Levis just after one singular performance. If he could do it on multiple occasions, sure, but until then, I don't trust it enough to where I'm taking that deal. I'd rather just have Jacobs and Hill for the upcoming future, or go after just completely different prospects. I'm not opposed to the idea of trading those players. I just think that what you're getting in return is not as sufficient in terms of the overall asking price of what you're giving away. Corey Miller sends in a question. Says, in a 12-team full PPR, currently 6-4, and I'm in third place. I have Goff, Jones, Connor, Amon-Ra, Lennon, BTJ, Olave, Kittle, Rico, Bucky, Akers, and Benson. I traded BTJ and Bucky for Debo. Is that a good trade? Your thoughts? Moving BTJ, I have no issue with at all, especially considering I don't love his upcoming schedule, nor do I like the idea that Mac Jones could be a starting quarterback rest of season if Trevor Lawrence is not to return. So, both those overall factors don't make him an appealing piece for the future. So moving him is certainly, I think, it's something that I've, over the course of the last couple of days, definitely been promoting in terms of trying to move him off roster, especially for those of you who have to deal with the fact that he has an upcoming bye week as well, which isn't, going to settle well for many of us, especially for us, trying to make the playoffs still or secure a position. As for your current circumstance here, in terms of running back depth, Aaron Jones, James Conner, pretty solid there. Moving Bucky, I think it really does hurt in the long run because you don't have an RB2 to fill in the absence of Conner this week. But again, Bucky wouldn't have helped you in that circumstance. But going into the future, James Conner and Aaron Jones are going to be your 2 starting running backs in the fantasy playoffs. So I don't really have an issue with this trade overall. Would I have liked to have kept Bucky? Sure, but considering you're getting rid of BTJ and getting a solidified wide receiver to start in your flex every week henceforth in a full PPR, I'm perfectly comfortable with the move that you made here, Corey. Well done. KB sends in a question. Says, London versus the Broncos or Tillman versus the Saints? Thanks. As of right now, I'm going to comfortably say that I'd probably play Tillman. Yeah, that's where I'm at this point. I'm pretty much all in on the Cleveland Browns passing game, and specifically I'm all in on Njoku, Judy, and Tillman as viable options, specifically Tillman as the number 1 receiving option of that offense. In the event in which we get into a situation where he doesn't score a touchdown, sure, still in a full PPR, going to be a valuable option based on his recent production within this offense. Levant sends in a question, nothing attached to it. Let me see if I can find it in the live chat, Levant. Let's see here. Control F. Where's Levant? Levant. All right, Levant says, my team is Burrow, Chase, Cup, Walker, Hunt, Njoku, Hopkins, Hubbard, Tracy, Hunter Henry, Charbonnet, Juju, and Khalil Herbert. Okay, that is the context of your team. And I just traded Chase for Tyreek Hill and Josh Jacobs. What are your thoughts in a half PPR? So this is the issue that I have with Tyreek Hill and specifically that trade, right? Like if Tyreek Hill is going to be perfectly healthy and no problem, he'll get back to being his normal self. That trade's absolutely worth it and it'll be fantastic. In the event in which this torn ligament in his wrist, which was reported last night and it continues to develop more information going forward, if this quote unquote torn ligament is going to be something of an issue to potentially even force him to miss time going forward or potentially even, have a season-ending injury in that circumstance, it concerns me. Now, again, I think it is the right move to make in terms of the trade, but there is a lot of potential risk involved with it. You know the risk. We're just going to hope for the best in that circumstance because, again, if it does pan out the way that we want it to and Tyreek Hill goes back to being his normal self, we would expect that, you definitely won that trade in that circumstance. But again, we have to wait and see just exactly what the extent of that injury is and what it entails for the future, which, again, we are not privy to in terms of that information. Young OG sends it a question. Says, trade Devontae Smith for Zay Flowers. Yes, I would. I'd rather have Zay Flowers the rest of the season. Thank you. All right, moving on to a question that came in from Joey Martin. Thank you, Joey. Says, in a PPR, plug and play Madison or drop for Warren or Estime. No, I'd rather play Madison going forward rest of season. It looks like it's most likely going to be Desmond Ridder starting at quarterback for the immediate future for the Las Vegas Raiders. Which obviously I don't think it bodes well. Obviously, the only time we've ever seen Desmond Ridder play was within an Atlanta Falcons offense that really wasn't pass heavy in that circumstance. And even in the opportunities in which he was given chances to throw the ball a lot, hasn't looked great in his career. But he can still be a suitable enough quarterback to at least get this offense to move down the field efficiently enough to where Madison will certainly be of more value in comparison to Estime and Warren rest season. The only way that Estime gains any sort of traction in comparison is if he gets receiving work, which he won't, and Warren will only ever be more valuable than Madison in an event in which Najee Harris misses time. He's never missed a game due to injury in his career. All right, let's see here. Rogo sends in a question. Thank you, Rogo. Says, sup, bro. We won. I'm 8-2. Team is full again. Okay. Yeah, basically. Yeah, your Bipocalypse is gone is what you mean. Drop 2. We have a standard half PPR. We have Matt, as in Stafford. Amari Cooper, who was on my IR. Chubb, Denver defense, Philadelphia defense. I've got Debo, Devontae Smith, Downs, Sutton, Gibbs, Swift, Montgomery, Jonnu, Baker, Otten, Higgins. I want to pick up another quarterback like Bo or Russ. Okay, that's cool. I mean, look, considering what you have on roster with Baker, if you want for this week, yeah, I don't mind the idea of going and picking up Bo Nix and playing him within the upcoming matchup. I don't mind either playing Russell Wilson in this instance for this week specifically. Again, for the future, again, you'll still have like Baker Mayfield implicated. But as of right now, as to who I'm dropping, if I'm not mistaken, Rogo, aren't you playing in a 2 QB league? Or am I mistaken? Was it a 1 QB league where you had 3 quarterbacks on roster? But either way, in this instance, going forward, specifically, like, if it's me, I probably drop both defenses before I move anything else. I mean, look, if you're playing in a 1 quarterback league, that's fine. We could pick up Bo Nix. We could drop Matthew Stafford. But at this point, yeah, I'm probably dropping Philly before this Thursday night matchup. Don't feel too comfortable about it. Again, Washington's offense has been really efficient this season. Even though Philly's defense has been great as of late, I'd still be looking elsewhere in terms of a potential streaming option. So Philly's defense is the immediate drop. As for the second, again, if you're going to play Denver defense, you keep them. Otherwise, you can stream later on in the week and kind of wait until you decide that. Otherwise, yeah, the second drop would have to be your quarterback. So it would go Philly and then Matt Stafford and then Denver after. Thank you, Rogo. All right, Al DMND sends in a question. It says, in a 12-team full PPR, we have Kyler, Nix, Breece Hall, Kamara, Pacheco, Marvin Harrison, BTJ, Shakir, Kraft, Laporta. Trade Breece Hall for Pickens and Madison. Considering the roster that you've gone ahead and expressed, okay, where you have Kamara, Pacheco, okay, by trading for Madison, you are leaving up a lot of potential risk. Like, I'd say immediately no, because I don't know what to expect out of Madison and that backfield rest of the season. They could come out this week and let Amir Abdullah play 50% of the snaps again, because that's what they did last time out. They could come out and give the goal line carries to Zamir White and completely siphon all of the value away from Madison in that instance. So until Pacheco's fully back, I don't think I'm moving Breece Hall per se. Now, do I want Pickens? Absolutely. I looked at his upcoming fantasy playoff schedule. It's incredible. But if you're looking for like immediate value to kind of impact your team, I don't know if bringing Madison in is going to be able to accomplish that at the moment. I just don't like the piece of Madison. I love Pickens, but bringing in Madison to try to fill in for Breece until we see Pacheco return, which again, we're not expecting Pacheco to play this week. He could very easily not even play the week after. He might not return until week 13, which again, yeah, that would be an issue for you. So I'm not too excited about that as of right now. All right, we had a question that came in from, let's see here, scroll back up. Okay. Fraudin sends in a question. Says, my Smitty, Kyron Williams, and Tracy for Mixon and Cup. I have Jaden Daniels, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, Pacheco, Higgins, D-Hop, McBride. PPR, talk to me, brother. I'm stuck. Okay, look, in terms of the overall potential going forward, considering where... Chase Brown, Higgins, D-Hop, you're bringing in Cup, which is a huge... Yeah, honestly, I'd take the deal. I would. Fraud, and I would take the deal. I would take the Cup and I would take the Mixon side very comfortably. The only concern that I ever have in this scenario is that I'm pretty sure the Texans have an upcoming bye week. But I mean, again, still, as long as they don't line up with your upcoming bye week with the Bengals, I think you'll be fine. Actually, it's a week 14 bye. Let me see here. NFL week 14. Just want to confirm what it looks like in terms of the week 14 buys. Yeah, you'll be fine. I'll take the deal. That's fine by me. I think it is the winning side in the long run. Because, again, you have so much already impactful depth on your roster, you can afford to make this kind of a deal. Thank you. All right. Daniel Barnes sends in a question. Daniel says, in a full PPR, I need to stream a tight end, Johnny Smith, Freiermuth, or Ertz. As of those three, I'd prefer to play Zach Ertz. Also, is it worth adding Olave to my IR? To do so, I'd have to drop Jonathan Brooks, start Lions or Texans. Okay, first and foremost, I'd pick up Ertz. That would be the tight end streamer for this week on Thursday night against the Eagles. In comparison to the alternative options, Freiermuth could be up there. My only concern with Freiermuth is the lack of opportunity share he continues to get every single week, even though it is a fantastic matchup taking on Baltimore. Again, their secondary has played horribly. It's a risk inherently playing him in comparison to Ertz, who gets a far greater target share of opportunity when you compare these two offenses. Now, in regards to Olave, you would only add him if you believe he can return post his IR stint. Again, considering he was placed on the IR prior to this most recent game, he will miss... Let me see here. What's the Saints' schedule look like? Do the Saints... have they already passed their bye week? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if they've actually had their bye week. I would assume they have. They have not. So considering they have a week 12 bye, you wouldn't get back Olave until 1, 2, 3, 4. So you wouldn't get him back until week 15. Now, again, that is under the assumption that he even returns this week. Now, if the exchange is dropping Jonathan Brooks in order to pick him up, I would be curious as to what your running back depth looks like to where giving up Jonathan Brooks, is it valuable enough to take that risk for the future? Because as of right now, again, the upcoming schedule for the Carolina Panthers running attack is awful. We talked about it earlier today, specifically in terms of the rest of the regular season fantasy football, weeks 14 through 11 through 14, and then 15 through 17, it doesn't look great either. Let me see here. If we're just looking for playoff upside specifically, let me just travel over here. This is something that I was showing earlier today in the running back rankings video. But let me see here specifically. Is Carolina implicated here? No. So Carolina's got to be somewhere here. Yeah, Carolina, they have Dallas, Arizona, and Tampa Bay. I don't really specifically like the idea of playing against Arizona or Tampa Bay in week 16, 17. So in this instance, sure, as long as you have the running back depth to be able to compensate for it, I don't mind the drop of Jonathan Brooks because it doesn't seem like Chuba Hubbard's going away anytime soon. As for Lions or Texans defense for this weekend, Lions is probably the preferred, assuming, of course, again, Mac Jones is playing quarterback. Thank you. Let's see here. Because, yeah, again, I'd also want to keep the Lions because they've played really well as a defense as of late, too. And it doesn't seem like they're slowing down anytime soon. So I wouldn't have to make any waiver move for that. If you can do the move for free, with the uncertainty of as to whether or not Mac Jones is playing Trevor Lawrence, if you can make the move for free without using any sort of fab or any sort of waiver priority, then I would just make the swap there because I know for a fact who's playing quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys without having to worry about it. And then having to make a move later in the week under the assumption that, Trevor Lawrence plays, oh man, I have to shift. Houston's already been picked up. All right, Davila Lobos sends in a question. Says, in a PPR 4-point per passing touchdown league, Allen or Goff? I'd much rather have Josh Allen. Tied for first with my opponent. I also have Gibbs and Kincaid, McBride on bye. We're both 8-2, and he has Lamar, Henry, and JJ, etc. Okay, so but in your instance, right? Kincaid, if he doesn't play, you need a backup tight end, but you're for sure going to play Josh Allen this week. That's not really even a question in my mind. Thank you. Denon says, questions in the chat. All right, Denon says, should I sell high on Cade Otton for Josh Jacobs? Yes, immediately. Not even a question. But he has 3 tight ends for some reason, which are Goddard, Ingram, and Kraft. Also, you have a pick my team and tell me if I do anything sweet in the deal in the trade. I mean, look, here's the thing. Denon, if somehow, some way, you're trying to get Josh Jacobs, you're going to have to send a running back. So you'd have to just figure out who is, I guess, specifically he interested in. Because when I look at your team as a whole, if I'm making a trade of this caliber, I'm sending Tony Pollard. So try that. Try to send Tony Pollard and see if it'll happen. If it does, absolutely take it. Thank you. Jorge Perez, what's up? Says questions in the chat. All right, Jorge. Says, hi, Andrew. In a full PPR, I have the Niners and the Giants defense. Thinking of dropping the Giants, who should I pick up? Packers, Texans, or the Dolphins? As of those 3, I prefer the Packers taking on the Chicago Bears this week. Thank you. Second best option would be the Texans in that situation. All right, moving on to Ryan Chen, who says, should I trade Jonathan Taylor / Jacoby Myers for Montgomery / Tyreek Hill despite the wrist injury? My other running backs are Connor, Tracy, Mixon. Wow, you got really good running backs. JJ, Higgins, Waddle, Pure Salt, and Olave are my wide receivers. Okay. The issue is, right, I don't have all the information, okay? If I had every single piece of information regarding his wrist injury and I knew what it was, kind of, if I had a clear understanding as to what exactly his re-injury rate could be, what the chances of him missing time going into the forward would be, what he, if I knew that he was a protected asset and he wasn't going to miss time due to injury, I'd say, yes, you make the deal. But considering I don't know whether or not that is a potential circumstance, it's really up to your risk assessment on it. Are you willing to take the risk of losing Jonathan Taylor in order to make this move? Because really, with Desmond Ridder most likely playing quarterback, Jacoby Myers is definitely a lesser option going forward. Not an unstartable option, but definitely nothing that you would start on your team once JJ and Higgins are healthy. So at the moment, again, I would say it's just a matter of risk assessment on your end. If you're willing to take the risk, I'd say, okay, let's go for it. But again, understand he could get hurt. He could miss time. He could also go back to being Tyreek Hill. And in that event, with a 50-50, he either plays well or doesn't. I mean, I think the upside is greater than the potential risk of downside. So I would take it if it was probably me. Not even probably. I would take it. But it just depends on your risk assessment on it and how kind of risk averse you are. Lockie McQueen sends in a question. Says questions in the chat. Thanks. No problem. Let me see if I can find it. McQueen. Lockie McQueen says, hey, Andrew, in a 14-team non-PPR, we're playing with 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs, and I need a wide receiver 3. My running backs are McCaffrey, Chase, Mostert, and Brooks. Okay, so you have 2 running backs. The other 2 are pretty much just fodder at this point. Trade Chase and Leggett for Bucky and either Pickens or Metcalf. Yes, absolutely. If you can trade Chase Brown and Leggett in order to get Bucky Irving, and if I'm picking one of the 2, I mean, honestly, I'm happy with either of them. Let me just pull up a reference point because I was doing stats earlier for the upcoming schedule for wide receivers for tomorrow's video. Let me see what we're talking about. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers, rest of season, wide receivers have the easiest strength of schedule amongst all. It doesn't matter what spectrum of time it is. I mean, from weeks 11 through 17, they have the easiest schedule. The defenses they play are giving up on average 29.9 fantasy points per game. The reason why it's such an easy strength of schedule is because they play Baltimore twice throughout that span. They play Cincy and Cleveland twice. Cleveland's giving up, over 34 fantasy points per game as of late to opposing wide receivers. So at this point, really their only difficult matchup upcoming is Philly in week 15. But I mean, even in that circumstance, I'd be relatively comfortable. Let me look at where's Seattle in this situation. Seattle kind of in the middle in the pack there. As for their long-term, yeah, I'd rather have Pickens. Give me Bucky and Pickens rest of the way. Thank you, Lockie. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Let me go back into the chat. Again, for those of you who are joining us on this wonderful Tuesday night, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. Again, I'm trying to answer questions. If you guys are going to send in a question, whether it is via, Discord for those of you who are Patreon members, whether it is, in the live chat, super chat, make sure you include your scoring format. Thank you again. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to a question from We Buy Homes, who says in a non-PPR, star one wide receiver, Drake London, Jaden Reed, or Devontae Smith. As of those three wide receivers this week, I am playing Jaden Reed. Thank you. Nick Q 3435 says in a waiver PPR, Knox minus Kincaid or Taysom Hill. In the event in which we do not have Dalton Kincaid active, I would play Dawson Knox this week. Thank you. I'm Gucci Upolo sends in a question, says PPR time to sit Tyreek Hill. No, it's not time yet. Listen, I've mentioned this in the past with other wide receivers and a lot of other kind of valuable fantasy prospects. When you draft these players or when you have them on roster, you have you have a unspoken kind of binding agreement with having them on roster that you have to auto start them. Any given week, Tyreek Hill can score 30 fantasy points. Has he not done it as of late? Absolutely. His best performance this season was week 1. Everything since then has been terrible. But again, in a lot of that overall spectrum of time, it has been in the absence of Tua. I would assume that going forward, this team, again, will eventually find themselves. Not to the point to where I'm sitting him in comparison to, playing, at this point, I'm looking at your team right now. I can see why you would want to bench him because you do have London and DK Metcalf. I get that. In that circumstance, I can justify it. But as of right now, it's not a guarantee that I'm sitting him in every circumstance. Currently starting Achane, Kyron, London, DK, Chase Brown, Myers. Okay. Or Bauer, in 4 and 6. Yeah. In this circumstance, within this upcoming week, I could understand it. And I don't knock you for the decision to potentially sit him in this circumstance. Am I excited to play London against Denver? No. I'd probably play Tyreek Hill over him, but I can understand why you would make that decision. I don't think you're crazy for doing so. Elseway sends in a question, nothing attached to it. And then Cavalry says, check Discord. Okay, I will in just a moment. One second. Let me find Elseway's question in the chat, and then I'll go ahead and get to the Discord. Elseway says, someone dropped Tillman, dropping Dobbs for him. You mean someone picked up Tillman, right? Should I drop McConkey for Pearsall? I don't understand what your question just ended up being here, brother. It was okay. Someone dropped Tillman, dropping Dobbs for him. Okay, understood it. Without the punctuation, it's very difficult to understand what the heck was going on. So yes, you're dropping Romeo Dobbs in order to pick up Tillman. Understood. Got it. And then it says, should I drop McConkey for Pearsall? Okay, no. What you should do instead is you should drop McConkey for Tillman and keep Dobbs rest of season. That's what I believe. Now, as for your next question, wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb, JSN, Mooney, Dobbs, McConkey. Yeah, so if I was in your position elsewhere, I would rather have Dobbs than McConkey rest of season, and I would be dropping McConkey in order to pick up Tillman. And I don't think you need Pearsall in the situation. Your wide receiver core is pretty stacked across the board. Thank you. Now, if I was in your position as well, elsewhere, I would be taking CeeDee Lamb and another one of these wide receivers, and I would be trading for A.J. Brown in order to get out of the CeeDee Lamb situation. And then maybe by going 2 for 1, opening up a roster spot, you can maybe go ahead and pick up both these options for free. All right, Cavalry, let me see what you sent on Discord. All right, it says, hey, Andrew, my wide receiver core seems solid in theory, but Zay Flowers has been making me... Okay, dude. Is there any chance I can trade him for a high-end wide receiver like Hill? I mean, listen, okay, so here's the thing. You're asking me this question. If you can trade away Flowers and get Hill, you should do it. I'd be willing to go and venture that path. So yeah, but understand, again, you'd be trading one wide receiver that has a lot of volatility for another one that has a lot of volatility. So understand that you are going from one very stressful situation to another. There is no guarantee. There is no, pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. There may be absolute despair at the end of it. As long as you understand the implied risk, yeah, let's go for it. Drew Gonzalez says, Mixon for Saquon. I'd get Saquon full PPR. Yes, I will take Saquon rest of the season. Thank you. Again, I understand. Jalen Hurts is a threat, and he is a threat beyond all belief. But yes, I would still rather have Saquon in this instance, going rest of season. Skeeter says, in a half PPR, pick 2, Drake London, Jaden Reed, Cedric Tillman, or Josh Downs. Okay, so if we're talking about this week in specific, who am I playing? The two highest ranked that I will probably have is Jaden Reed and Cedric Tillman this week out of those four. Thank you. Alex Songrass sends in a question. Says, which defense this week? Texans, Packers, Rams, Dolphins, Saints, or Broncos? Out of those available, I'm still very much so inclined to play the Packers defense, followed by the Texans second. I think the Rams are a pretty solid play, but I'd probably go like Packers, Texans, Dolphins, Rams, Broncos, Saints. That's probably the order in which I approach it. Standard start one, Ridley, Adams, Myers, and Tillman. Out of that group, Alex, as of right now in a standard scoring format, I probably end up playing Tillman this week. Thank you. Moving on to a question that comes in from Dynasty39. Says, I have Darnold, Nix, Nico, Ladd, Deontay, Addison, Bijan, Achane, Bowers, Ferguson, Dowdle, Warren, Hawkinson. Okay, so you got an army here. Would you trade Hawkinson for Sutton? Considering you have Bowers and Bowers is past his bye week, yes, I would. Considering your wide receiver depth with Nico Collins and then, the uncertainty of what Deontay Johnson, Ladd McConkey, Addison provide on a weekly basis, yes, I would immediately make that trade, in fact. Yes. But again, he does have an upcoming bye week that may hurt in the upcoming circumstance. I think it's week 14, but even in the long term, I think it's the correct move. All right. Nightwalker sends in a question. Says, wide receivers are Ridley, Tillman, Devontae Adams, Jawan Jennings. My running backs are Stevenson, Pollard, Eckler, Swift. I need one wide receiver and one running back starter and one flex from either of the group in a full PPR. Cool. So of the available that you have, I'm playing Tillman as your wide receiver one. As your RB1 this week, depending on what Thursday night looks like, if Thursday provides us no Brian Robinson Jr., I would play Eckler out of all of those running back options. And then within your flex position, I am most likely playing Devontae Adams there. So I go Tillman, Adams, Eckler. In the event in which Brian Robinson is active, at that point, you're pivoting from Eckler and playing Swift. Thank you. AM sends in a question, says, would you trade Chase Brown and Jaden Reed for JT? No, I would not. I would rather have Chase Brown and Jaden Reed 1,000%. I'd much rather have those two. Eric sends in a question, says, hi, Andrew. Lamb, Dobbins for Adams, Tracy, full PPR. Yes, I will take Adams, Tracy rest of season. Thank you. As long as you can, afford the idea that you're not going to have Tracy this upcoming week and you're not going to have Adams in an also future week because both of them are going to be on an upcoming bye week. If you're already in a very secured position to where you have enough depth or you are in a good enough win-loss record to where you can afford these players missing time, sure. Because you got to understand, again, Dallas and the Chargers have already passed their bye weeks. You have no issue. They will always start for you henceforth in comparison to what Adams and Tracy will present. But considering the upcoming schedules for those two receivers, the associated quarterbacks, etc., I would rather have the Adams side. Thank you. John sends in a question. Says, in a 12-man half PPR, I've got Kyron Williams, Jacobs, Cook, Chase, Pickens. Bench is Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. I got offered Nico Collins for Cook and Hopkins. What do you think? I would take the deal. Personally, I would. I think the offense for the Houston Texans is in so much of a desperate need of Nico Collins' return. Once he returns, he should go back to being a top 3 wide receiver rest of season, which in exchange for what you were giving, I think it is very much so a comparable and equal trade to where the person you're trading with should not feel at any point that they got slighted. They're still getting back very much so talented options that are going to be, still of value. Hopkins could very easily be top 20 rest of the season, and Cook could very easily be top 15. So really, they're getting back a lot of value. You're just getting a top 3 player, which is capable in a half PPR of scoring 20 points per week the rest of the way. Dragon Slayer sends in a question. Says, in a PPR, should I trade Flowers and Dallas Goedert for CeeDee Lamb? Interesting. I don't know if I'm going to ever suggest anybody trading for CeeDee Lamb at the moment. Again, he's still going to have himself value, but he is still going to be a wide receiver too. So from anywhere between the range of like wide receiver 13 to 24. Now, am I super excited for trading for someone of that caliber? Considering I have a wide receiver that is just as valuable in Flowers, I feel like you're losing more than you're gaining because, quite frankly, I already know who's playing quarterback for the Ravens. I don't know, and I cannot confirm whether it's going to be Cooper Rush or Trey Lance going forward every week. As of this week, they have said that it's going to be Cooper Rush, but who's to say that Trey Lance doesn't take over in a future performance and then potentially completely tank the value of CeeDee Lamb? So I'm not really interested in trading for CeeDee Lamb. I'm trying to get rid of him in many of instances. I would keep what you have. Thank you. Nick L sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew, happy birthday, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Says, I'm 5-5 in a full PPR. Pick 2 between London Higgins, if he plays, Chase Brown, Flowers, McLaurin. Cool. Of those available options, again, in the event in which Higgins was to start this week, he would play alongside of Chase Brown, and I'd go with both those. But considering I don't expect him to play, my immediate suggestion is going to be Chase Brown alongside of Zay Flowers this week. That is my immediate suggestion. The number 3 option after that would be McLaurin. Number 4 would be London. Number 5 would be Higgins again because I don't think he plays. Also, I have one more questions in the chat. All right, Nick, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let me see if I can find it in the live chat, though. Nick L, where are you? Nick, if you can do me a favor and just retype it, that'd be greatly appreciated because there's nothing in the chat at the moment. Anonymous sends in a question, nothing attached to it. Anonymous, let's see here. Anonymous, nothing in the live chat from you as well. If you could do me a favor, type it in the chat. Thank you, appreciate it. Dallas Disaster says in a full PPR, Evans for Tillman and Pacheco. Interesting. I think it depends on what your running back depth looks like. If you are very much so settled at wide receiver to where you do not need, like a wide receiver 1-esque player, which Evans will evidently be once he returns. If you're desperately in need of that running back depth that Pacheco potentially provides in the upcoming future, specifically week 12 or 13, then yes, I would take the deal. But if you're like stacked at running back and Pacheco's not even going to get into the rotation, I'd rather just have Evans at that point. But yeah, again, very much so dependent on what your current circumstances. David Dooley says in a half PPR, drop Reed or Dell for Tillman. If I was going to drop one, I would drop Dell for him. I'm not dropping Reed. Reed should be... Listen, Reed's the guy I'm trading for, guys. That's the guy I want rest of season. Vic805 in the live chat said, is BTJ droppable with Trevor Lawrence out for season? Who said Trevor Lawrence is out for the season? I'm assuming that's speculatory out for the season. Because everything we've heard is he could miss, but there's no guarantee of that. Again, still dealing with that shoulder injury. Is he a drop? No. But again, he's still not out for the season. So until that is a confirmed reality, I'll just ignore the question. All right, we had a question that came in from Gabe Marriott, who says, got offered London and Cook for Gibbs and JSN. Do I take it? I mean, yeah, I would. I'd rather have London and Cook rest of season at this current moment. Thank you. Mo Money sends in a question. Says, trade CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith, and Montgomery for Connor and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yep, I would. If giving away 2 of those wide receivers is definitely something that is going to impact you negatively and it's going to really kill the rest of your season, then, evidently you just don't make the trade. But in the long run, I think it is the right move to make. Tan Fam sends in a question. Again, this is under the assumption that you're so stacked on your team that you can give away 3 for 2s of this caliber and this magnitude. I would assume that you are stacked at this capacity. You're not playing in a 14-team league and giving away 3 starters for 2. I'm assuming, of course. Tan Fam says Jets, Chiefs, drop 1. As for defense, I'd rather drop the Jets. Or Dolphins on the waiver wire this week. I mean, the Chiefs this week, I'm trying to remember who they play. They play against Buffalo. Not really too interested in that circumstance, so I'd rather just pick up the Dolphins and play them against Desmond Ridder or Gardner Minshew, whichever one of the 2. But yeah, I would be dropping the Jets in order to accomplish that. Thank you. All right. Did the live chat break? Like, I'm so confused as to why... Okay, there it is. I got it now. Okay, so it was a little bit broken on my end. So let me see what Nick L had to say in the chat. Did it end up typing in? There you go. It says, Tua looked terrible last night. Should I drop him for Knicks or Stroud so I can play one of them over on Kyler's bye? Yeah, so as of those 2 potential options, I'd play Stroud this upcoming week, especially with the return of Nico Collins taking on that defense for this week. Yeah, I think that's the exciting matchup, taking on Dallas. I will play Stroud there. Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate it. Okay, then I got to find Anonymous's question. Anonymous says, I'm currently 6-4.5 PPR. Javonte is my running back. 2 behind Kyron. RB2 behind Kyron. Okay. So you're dropping Javonte is what I'm hearing. If I can't drop Javonte for Estime, should I drop him for Dolphins D or even Rams defense? I have the Chiefs. Okay. Or ride Spears as my RB2. Yeah. So here's my suggestion. Based on the overall workload and the snap share that Javonte Williams experienced on Sunday against the Chiefs, I would be suggesting that you drop Javonte Williams because it's a lost cause. And obviously try to pick up Estime. In the event in which you're not able to get Estime, yes, I would pick up the Dolphins defense and I would play them this week against the Raiders very comfortably. So yeah, that's what you should do. Let's see here. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Jorge Perez, I think we got to your question, right? Okay, yeah, never mind. I found your other question, Jorge. says, where can I improve? This roster is Jalen Hurts. Can't improve that. That's a literal top 2 quarterback. Kamara, okay, top 10 running back. Kyron, top 10 running back. Wide receiver Mooney, who's a top 12 wide receiver. Nakua, top 12 wide. I mean, Mooney is currently a top 12 wide receiver. Nakua is a, rest of season top 12 wide receiver. Devontae Smith is your biggest kind of flaw there. Hawkinson looked great. Chase Brown is good. Dicker is your kicker. Bench is Dobbs, Hunt, Kraft, Love, Tracy. Okay, cool. I mean, look, at this point, what my primary suggestion was to a lot of people earlier today, based on what I was explaining in this video in terms of rest of season, strength of schedule, where I want to potentially improve on a lot of these teams is looking for, and I'll suggest this every day as the week progresses, but I'm going after running backs by the name of James Conner, Bucky Irving, and then you already have Tracy, so we're not even worried about that. So those are the 2 that I would suggest you try to go after. Those are the 2 that I want on roster. If somehow, some way you can accomplish that, and they can be your... Actually, no, you already have 3 solid running backs. Never mind. You don't even need to make those moves. Never mind. I mean, I guess you could theoretically move Chase Brown in order to get that, like a Connor, because of the upcoming schedule, but it's not even necessary to this extent. Really, at this point, maybe I take Mooney plus Tracy and I go look for a team that is desperate for a running back and I try to improve on that wide receiver position. But outside of that, I don't think there's like an immediate need because you have so much incredible depth across the board. Like tight end and quarterback do not move. Your starting running backs, all 3 of them are great. On top of the fact that you have Hunt and Tracy on the bench, like really you are in one of those positions where you have too much depth. And unless you 2-for-1 trade 4 upgrades, there's really nothing to do because 1-for-1s are not going to work in this circumstance because you're not going to make immediate upgrades with those kind of trades. Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Shung in the chat says, thoughts on T. Higgins' rest of season? I mean, again, if he's healthy, then he's great. Every single week he's been healthy this season. He has seen ample opportunity, and he's either, had himself a couple opportunities that he's dropped touchdowns or he has scored them all. So really, once he's healthy, you're good to go. Now, is he someone that I'm absolutely going after and trading? Yes, I would like to trade for T. Higgins right now if you're in a position where you already have a secure fantasy playoff spot for the future. If you're not in one of those positions to where you're going to be able to be secure, you're not trading for him because, again, we don't know what his status is. He's missed, what, like 4 weeks now? Let me see here. Let's see. Where has Waldo gone? Mr. T. Higgins. So he's missed the last 3 games. Considering they have a week 12 bye, I'm going to potentially predict that he doesn't play this week. And he misses this week, subsequently misses the next week because of the bye, and returns to week 13. Week 13 against Pittsburgh, week 14 against Dallas, 15 against Tennessee, 16 versus Cleveland, 17 versus Denver. I don't love that matchup against Denver, but again, when you're playing on the opposite side of Jamar Chase, life is a lot easier. And I still think that he would be a top 24 wide receiver, if not a better top 16 potential option, rest of the way once healthy. Should I trade Geno for Kelsey? Astro, depends on what kind of league we're talking about. Are we talking about a super flex format or are we talking about a 1 quarterback format? If we're talking about 1 QB league, the deal's done. If we're talking about super flex, it depends on what your backup is at quarterback in which you're filling into that second QB spot every week in comparison. Let's see here. Trade away Achane to get Nico. Frias, I think it depends on what you have at wide receiver. I think it depends on what you have at running back in terms of depth and then additionally a wide receiver because I would say, yes, it is a very equal trade. Both overall parties will get themselves what they need, which is a high scoring potential player within that given interpositional kind of conversation, running back and wide receiver. So I think it's an equal trade. So would I take it? Yes, under the assumption, again, that you need wide receiver and you have enough running back depth to lose Achane and still not kind of kill you in that circumstance. Dre Play says, in a half PPR, would you trade away King Henry for Breece Hall and Marvin Harrison? Probably not. Again, conventional wisdom would say yes, but at the moment, again, Breece Hall scares the crap out of me. He really does. My wide receivers are AJ, Juwan Jennings, and Coleman. Okay, so Coleman's injured for another consecutive week. Already designated him out this week. Either hurt or something. I think it's a fair trade in return. I think it's fair. Considering what you have at wide receiver, it's probably something that I'd be willing to take. Do I love it? No, but I think you probably, in the long term, it'll probably help you more than it hurts you, in my opinion, Dre. Ginger sends in a question. Says, would you drop Darnold for Russell Wilson? If so, would you start Wilson over Stroud this week, even with Nico back? I would not start Wilson over Stroud. I would still play Stroud this week. Am I dropping Darnold in exchange for Russell Wilson in the long term? Let me do myself a favor here. Let me look at the upcoming schedule of Darnold and because really, if you have Stroud, it's just going to be a matter of like, when are you going to bench Stroud? Well, first and foremost, Stroud's going to be on bye week upcoming, right? So if I look at the Texans schedule here upcoming, they have a week 14 bye. So then immediately I'm going to Sam Darnold. Who does he play week 14? Atlanta. Atlanta has allowed 2 passing touchdowns to 8 of the last 9 quarterbacks they have played against. Okay, so then if we compare that to what Russell Wilson's going to face in that given week, let's go ahead and pull up Russell Wilson's week 14 schedule, because that's the only important thing. He takes on Cleveland. I think that's also a pretty advantageous matchup. Who would I rather have in that circumstance? Probably prefer to have Darnold in that sequence, but ever so slightly. So really, I don't mind the swap. But when we're looking towards the future, specifically for week 14 and beyond, or not even beyond, just week 14, because that is the fill-in for Stroud, as of right now, I'd rather have Darnold. Let's see here. We move on to a question that comes in from Cisco Billy, who says, I got offered Amon-Ra and Chuba for my Henry and Lamb. No, I'd rather have Henry and Lamb. I don't want Chuba. Full PPR, should I take it? I'm 9-1. No, I'd rather have Lamb and Henry. Thank you. Appreciate it. Joseph sends in a question. Joseph Weintraub says, Lamb, Neighbors, Pickens, Wilson, which 2 package RB? If I'm trading away 2 of these wide receivers, at this point, I think rest of season, who I prefer to have is Pickens and Wilson. Now, Neighbors would be 3rd, Lamb would be last. Lamb is who you're trying to move for a running back. As for who I'm going for at running back, again, like I'll reiterate, Bucky Irving or James Conner. Go and see what they want in exchange for that player. They might need a running back in exchange as well, so you might need to pair up a running back plus Lamb in order to potentially get that in return. If that's something that you're interested in, potentially follow down that path. Lockie McQueen says, Bucks or Cardinals for the playoffs defense? I'd probably prefer to have the Cardinals defense, because I'm familiar with what they're taking on, New England, Carolina, and then subsequently after the LA Rams, but I haven't looked at the Bucks schedule. Let me go ahead and pull it up for the fantasy playoffs and see if it's any more enticing. Taking on the Chargers, the Dallas Cowboys, and I'd rather have Arizona's defense, because, again, Arizona's secondary is actually somewhat good in comparison to Tampa Bay's, who's a liability every week. So, yeah, I'll take Arizona defense for the fantasy playoffs, for sure. For those of you who are already preparing for your fantasy playoff schedule, I would say that it's probably in your best interest to just rock with the Arizona Cardinals until then, just to ensure that you have them on roster. Otherwise, maybe just have them on your bench. Darren Hill sends in a question, says, trade BTJ for Montgomery. I need a running back. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be very comfortable doing so. I'd even be willing to take less than Montgomery, but if you can get Montgomery, who's a 12 to 14 point player at running back, half PPR, yeah, it has a great trade for you, honestly. Blair Davis sends in a question, says, in a full PPR, I need 1 running back and 2 wide receivers and 1 flex out of Madison, Warren, Nico, Cooper, Hill, Mooney, Jennings, and Worthy. Thanks. All right, so of the available players that you have, there are a lot of players in this overall conversation who are non-starters. Like Worthy cannot play. In no circumstance will I field him. Now, in comparison to the alternative options you have, at the moment, Nico Collins has to play. That is a given, especially on his first week back after 5 weeks of rest, taking on that defense. I think it should be a walk in the park for the entire Houston offense as a whole. But yeah, Nico Collins is a for sure wide receiver 1. If it's me, because considering Mooney plays against Denver, Hill takes on the Raiders, Cooper takes on Kansas City. If it's me, I'm probably playing Hill as my wide receiver 2. Nico and Hill are my wide receivers. My RB1 in this circumstance is going to be Alexander Madison. And in my flex is probably going to be, out of those available options, do I play Juwan Jennings versus? Yes, I do. Shoot. Am I going to play him over Mooney? Am I that scared of Denver's matchup? So right now, it's either Mooney or Jennings in the flex. I want to lean towards Jennings because I know Seattle's secondary is terrible, but conventional wisdom tells me to just roll with the hot hand of Mooney considering how great he's been as of late, so I'll just suggest Mooney at the moment. So I'll go Nico, Hill, Mooney, and Madison. Thank you. Dave sends in a question, says Brian Robinson and Devontae Smith for K9 and Ladd McConkey. Probably not. I don't know if I can trust Ladd McConkey at that point. If we can get more information regarding Brian Robinson's injury, for example, if he doesn't play this week, at that point, I'd be willing to move him because he also has an upcoming bye week. So if you're still trying to make the playoffs, it would probably be in your best interest to get rid of him in order to get that running back depth you require. But again, we won't know until probably tomorrow. By that point, again, if it doesn't look like he's going to play, then you'd make the move. Otherwise, you keep. Like the Jeans sends out a question. Says PPR, I have Henry Jacobs Chubb with Justice Hill and Emmanuel Wilson as my handcuffs. Understood. Someone dropped Ford. Should I swap Hill for Ford? No, don't need to. Again, in the event in which Derrick Henry was to potentially go down, Keaton Mitchell would be one of the primary benefactors of that rather than Justice Hill. Justice Hill will still get himself a boost of opportunity, but I'd still rather have Hill at the moment. Look, now that I explained that out loud, yes, we would trade for Ford. I mean, we would swap that for Ford. Excuse me. Yeah. Let's go get Ford. Yeah, I don't know why I was... Okay. Yeah, my bad. Yes. Let's swap it for Ford, just in case. Does Week 14 bye matter? I mean, yeah, it does matter. It depends. But in your case, probably not. Depends here. Let's see. NFL Week 14. In your case... No, you'll be fine. Thank you. Aaron sends in a question. Says, Kincaid, Laporta, or Pitts this week? Injured, healthy. So I'd probably play Pitts at this moment. Considering, again, Kincaid dealing with an injury, which we have no idea as to whether or not he's even going to play. Laporta dealing with a shoulder injury. If it's between a banged up Laporta or a Pitts right now, I'd probably take Pitts. Dave says, appreciate all the help. No problem, Dave. Glad to help. Gets Knowledge says, drop Jonathan Brooks for Rachaad White immediately. Yep. Instantly, in fact. Or one of my two tight ends, Pitts or Kraft. No, I'd rather keep those tight ends, and I would drop Jonathan Brooks in order to pick up Rachaad White. Thank you. Let's see here. Sean Trevino in the chat says, PPR, trade away BTJ and Hunt for Pickens. I would. Again, listen, the way I see it, with Pacheco practicing in the upcoming weeks, eventually, like we anticipate, Kareem Hunt will disappear and be the RB2. Doesn't mean that he'll be completely void of value, but he certainly won't be a top 24 running back ever again, rest of season, once Pacheco returns. So in the moment, yeah, I think it's a great overall future look to get an upgrade. All right. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Isaacius, I guess, right? It's like Isaacius. Yeah, Isaacius. Full PPR. Trade Jacobs and Wan'Dale Robinson for James Conner. No, no. Keep Josh Jacobs. That's fine. Josh Jacobs is fine. Look, in terms of the long term, in terms of fantasy playoff schedule, Josh Jacobs has it better off. James Conner, again, has his injury history. So does Josh Jacobs. But again, both of them have been relatively healthy, so I'm not even going to mark that against either of the two. The fact that you have to give away Wan'Dale Robinson as well to get a lesser potential fantasy playoff schedule, I'd rather just have Jacobs in that circumstance. Denon sends in a question. Nothing attached to it. Denon, did you message me again on Discord or something? Let's see here. I don't see anything. Maddie says, in a full PPR, Jaden Daniels, Russ, or Stroud this week? I don't see myself ever benching Jaden Daniels. So he'd be number 1, Stroud would be 2, Wilson will be number 3. Let's see here. Kristen says, hey Andrew, in a half PPR, I have JSN, Garrett Wilson, Jawan Jennings, and DeAndre Hopkins. Would you run wide receivers in the flex? I mean, in a half PPR, I don't mind that. It depends. What are your alternative options? So like what running backs or potential tight ends would you have on roster, or do you have on roster currently? That would be the alternative. Because when I look at it as it currently stands, under the assumption that you're playing in a league in which you're starting 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, like Garrett Wilson and most likely at the moment, I'm thinking it's like Garrett Wilson and Jawan Jennings are your starting receivers this week. Now, would I consider playing D-Hop and JSN in the flex? Sure, in the event in which you don't have a running back that is more valuable than them. So just type in the live chat, what do you have in terms of running backs that are available to play this week? Let's see here. Rock Gosu says, Bucky Irving or Jawan Jennings for what, rest of season? Is that what we're talking about? I mean, look, again, when you look at this upcoming schedule for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, guys, it is a absolute cakewalk. Like I'll transition the screen over again just so we can kind of go over this. So look, Tampa Bay, they have a bye week, sure, but then they take on the Giants, the Carolina Panthers, and the Las Vegas Raiders, okay? Those are 3 top 12 matchups based on week 6 through 10 of fantasy points allowed to point running backs on the ground. And then if we go to the actual fantasy playoff schedule, Los Angeles Chargers is a tough matchup, but then you go ahead and you take on Dallas, who by week 16, their entire soul will be crushed. Their coach might be fired. Who knows? And then you take on Carolina again, which is the best matchup at the position for a championship Sunday. Bucky Irving is a fantastic option in those kind of circumstances. So if we're talking about this week, I'm going to assume that, again, because Oh, never mind. Now I read the question. I'm an idiot, Gosu. You said Bucky Irving for Jawan Jennings. No, I'd rather have Bucky Irving. Sorry. My apologies. I didn't read that properly. I'm an idiot. Denon, did you end up typing in? Yes, as I got a trade offer for Terry McLaurin for CeeDee Lamb. Is it worth it? So are you going to get Terry McLaurin? If you are the one receiving Terry McLaurin in this hypothetical trade, yes, I would say it's worth it. I don't want to have CeeDee Lamb on roster. I'd rather have Terry rest of the season. Blades sends in a question. Says, my team is 5-5 in a full PPR. I have Henry and Mixon as my running backs, but both have week 14 bye. Which one should I trade? Keep strength of schedule in mind. Henry and Mixon, am I keeping strength of schedule in mind with either of those two? No. They are both matchup proof. They are both just innately too talented and playing far too well within the current structure of that offense to be any sort of regression point based on matchup. But am I giving away either of these two? Unless you're getting like a Saquon Barkley or a Christian McCaffrey, I think you're pretty comfortable with what you have. Maybe Bijan Robinson. So those would be like the only other running backs that are in the top 5 conversation alongside of them that I'd be willing to potentially go after. Maybe even Devon Achane could be considered, but I don't think you have to move at the moment as of right now. But again, you're 5-5. They both have a week 14 bye. So considering that situation, if you were going to trade them, you would have to get running backs that don't have that have already surpassed their bye week. So by week 14, again, I think there's 6 teams on bye. So the only teams you couldn't, look, if you're going to trade for Barkley, he's already passed his bye. That's great. You trade for McCaffrey, he's already passed his bye. Great. Achane passed his bye. Great. Bijan has an upcoming bye, but I think that's next week. But again, you probably don't want to fuck with that. So you can get one of those top 3 running backs. Shit, let's do it. All right. Let's see here. Perk Nowitzki 41. That's a good one. I actually like that name. That is a solid username. All right, Perk. Let's see here. It says, first in my league, my team consists of Jalen Hurts, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Kyron Williams, Swift, Hunt, Kelsey. Traded BTJ and Tracy on my bench to get Pacheco. Thoughts? I think... Okay, you're in first place. I'm going to assume your bench has a lot more depth. Giving away those two just for Pacheco, I think hurts mightily. I think I probably would have kept what you have. But in the event in which Pacheco can come back and look as good as Hunt has as of late, I think it'll be worth it in the long run. But again, with the uncertainty of BTJ, the uncertainty of Daniel Jones, I can understand why you made the deal. But again, Pacheco won't be back for another couple weeks here. So, at least you have Hunt to suffice in the meanwhile. But yeah, if it was me, I probably would have kept because I just want to have the depth just in case of an injury occurring. Like if something was to happen to any of your receivers, like losing BTJ, if you don't have anybody else on your bench at wide receiver that is a potent enough streaming option within a given week in a bye week or a potential injury, it would keep me concerned. All right, let's see here. Andrew sends in a question, says, thank you for making great content. 10-team full PPR. Quick hit. I have AJ Brown, Downs, and Tillman. Felt like I need another wide receiver. I traded Mark Andrews and Kareem Hunt for DK Metcalf. I got Bowers and good running back depth. Beautiful. Fantastic. Glad to hear it. Well done, Andrew. All right, let's see here. Christina sent in a follow-up. Says, my running backs depth is not the best. Bye week in week 4 in a 14-team person league. Jeez, okay. I have Swift, Algier, Tyron Tracy is on bye, so I only have a wide receiver in flex. Okay, so let me go back to the prior context of this question. So yeah, in this given week, absolutely playing a wide receiver in the flex. That's not even a question at this point. As to who it's going to be, between the available options, again, if it's me, am I starting a wide receiver like D-Hop against the Buffalo Bills? How did he fare against, let's see here. I haven't watched film on the game for D-Hop against the Broncos, because usually the Broncos are one of the most boring games to watch, so I keep that for later in the week. 5 catches for 4. Yeah, you know what? As of right now, if it was me, Kristen, I'd probably play JSN, Jawan Jennings, and Garrett Wilson this week. As of this moment. Thank you. To the Max sends in a question. Thank you to the Max. Says, think I can trade Flowers for Higgins or Evans? I think it's definitely a high likelihood that you can get away with that, especially considering, again, Evans is injured. Not going to be back until next week. Higgins is injured, probably not going to be back for a couple weeks. So you probably can get away with that under the assumption that the team you're trading with needs a wide receiver in the upcoming future. My wide receivers are yeah, cool. Listen, if I was going to trade for one of those two, I would be trading for Evans, quite frankly. If you only get Higgins in return, I think it's a relatively equal trade. I think that's a matter of preference rather than a matter of like getting a huge upgrade in that circumstance. So again, I would try to get Evans, but if you get Higgins there and you're happy with it, then so be it. Otherwise, I'm comfortable keeping Flowers if it's in exchange for Higgins. Let's see here. La Raza says, in a half PPR 12-team league, I have Baker, CMC, Bijan, Higgins, Addison, Otten, and Jonathan Taylor. Love the channel. Thank you. Okay, so what is your question to, kind of continue on here? If we're just talking about the team as a whole, again, once Baker comes back from bye week, he's your starter every week. Christian McCaffrey's fantastic. Bijan's fantastic. After Higgins comes back from most likely his bye week, which will return from his injury, he'll be great there. Addison, I'm not interested in, but Otten is great and Taylor's great. So really, in terms of the team as a whole, pretty well set up for success. As long as they stay healthy, of course. Higgins is the main contingency on that health factor. If he's not healthy, Addison's not going to be able to cut it, and you're going to have to make a trade in the upcoming future here. Or potentially hit waivers and hope that you hit a jackpot. Prince Caspian says, Hunter Henry to the moon. I need him badly. Let's hope so. Yeah, listen, they've got a great matchup this week against the Rams. The Rams defense, in terms of their secondary play, hasn't been great, and they really haven't played well against tight ends thus far this season, so we'd hope for the best in that circumstance. Shazy says, can you please answer my question? I'm here every day, brother. I'm going to be honest, Shazy. I'm not going to, let's see here, Shazy. Let's see what your question is first and foremost. 16-team league. Says, it's a 2-flex league. I needed a wide receiver badly. I had Deontay Johnson with Amon-Ra. Okay, so yeah, you definitely need a wide receiver. I had Henry and Kamara. I traded Kamara for Chubb and Tillman. I don't know about that one, brother. Also have Ferguson, Ertz, and Hunt. Bad trade? Yeah, look, here's the thing. I don't like the idea of trading for Chubb in very many instances. Considering the 16-team format, I would have just loved any other running back except for Chubb there. Because if it's a full PPR, understand that Chubb is not going to get any receiving work. Like if he gets one reception, we're lucky. So as of right now, I don't love the trade. I understand that you have a desperate need for wide receiver, but I would have went for something else rather than especially if I'm going to give away Kamara, at least I want to get, you get two mediocre players potentially. If Tillman continues to play as well as he has, then you're going to live and you're going to be perfectly fine. But if Tillman doesn't live up to his recent performances, this will be potentially regretted in the upcoming future. That's the only rough part. Now, I will say, when you say, please answer my question, I'm here every day, brother, and I didn't want to call you out, but I got to, okay? I got to call you out, brother, okay? Quite frankly, the last time you typed in this chat was back in week 5 on a Sunday morning. How do I know that? It's because I have all the logs available here. So, good one. Well done. You got one past me, brother, but I know when you guys are here. I recognize names. I was going to say, I don't recognize your name. I don't know if you're here all the time. I mean, at least you may be here all the time, but you don't type all the time. So, you got one on me now, but listen, brother, you won't be able to get me in the future. Gio sends in a question, says, full PPR, I traded away Higgins, Ferguson, and Pollard for Mixon and Reed. Yes or no? Yes. Are you kidding me? Give me Mixon and Reed 12 times out of 10. Are you kidding? That's just free. All right, let's see here. Jizzy sends in a question, says, in a full PPR, one flex, Hunt, Tyreek Hill, Lamb, or Jonathan Taylor. I'm playing Jonathan Taylor out of the group. Thank you. X Kukui says, I need a quarterback for Allen's bye in week 12. Should I pick up Stroud, May, or Herbert, or Goff? Okay, let me look at week 12 schedule. Week 12 NFL. So considering the upcoming schedule for week 12, okay? Again, there are 6 teams on bye. I don't know why the NFL does this. I don't know why they have this incessant need to have 17 teams on bye and have the most, ridiculous circumstance for fantasy purposes. But considering Stroud is the best quarterback of the group that you mentioned against Tennessee, I don't mind that. What's your other options? Drake May, Justin Herbert, or Jared Goff? Okay, so Jared Goff takes on Indianapolis. That seems like it's pretty free. May versus the Dolphins, I don't specifically like unless he gets himself a rushing touchdown. And then you have the last option, which is Justin Herbert, who takes on the Ravens at home Monday night. Okay, if it's me, I'm probably going with the safety of Stroud. If not there, probably Probably Herbert second, Jared Goff third, Drake May fourth. That's the order in which I approach it as of right now. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Terry Fiji in the chat says, hey, Andrew, hope all is well. Yeah, Terry, let me get to you in a second, my man. Terry, where art thou? Terry, how do you spell your name? Is it one R? Terry, where's your... Yeah, there it is. It says, how can I improve my team for the playoffs? First and foremost, Cardinals. That's what we want. We want Cardinals for the playoffs, okay? That's first and foremost. Kyler, Connor, Marvin Harrison, McBride, Cardinals defense. That's what we want. Baseline. That's the structure. Continuing, and maybe even Baker, Evans, Bucky. Structure. That's what we want. Continuing on. How can I improve my team? I have Jordan Love. And then you also have Knicks. Okay, very well. You have Puka Nacua, Olave. So Olave pretty much needs to be traded. BTJ probably needs to be traded. Smith. Okay, that's fine. You have Mooney. Great. Dobbs. Okay. Bijan, Hall, Bucky. Beautiful. Estime. Laporta, Kraft. Kaimi Bear-Baron, and you have the Lions defense. Cool. So look, in terms of the long term, I think your wide receivers definitely need an upgrade. If you're in the position to where you could potentially find a team in your league, considering you're 5-5, maybe you can find somebody in your league that has a higher overall record. Maybe they're like a 7-3 team or an 8-2 that'd be willing to invest in Olave, because if he's going to fill in your IR spot, then you're fine. If he's actually going to fill into an actual bench spot and it's going to actually hurt in terms of your depth going forward, I'm moving him. I'm also moving BTJ because of the uncertainty of Lawrence. So those are the two that I want to move. If I can trade 2 for 1 for a wide receiver, I'm approaching so. So Evans, please and thank you. Marvin Harrison, please and thank you. DK Metcalf will take. Jaden Reed, please and thank you. Those are the kind of players that I'm trying to see if you can get in exchange for that. Thank you. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in. We took care of that. Christine, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Elseway says, going against AJ this week, doubt my opponent will trade. Understood, Elseway. So let me see what your prior question was. Let me see if I can even find it in the live chat again. Probably we can't, yeah. So I probably suggested trading for AJ Brown. Was that probably the case? If that was the case, please tell me what your question was again so I can suggest another player to go after. Damn, go easy on him, Andrew. Listen, I had to. Sometimes I just have to. I don't type, I listen. I understand, but look, here's the thing. You can't like accuse me of never answering a question and then be like, Andrew, I'm always here. You never answer, and then bada boom, you know what I mean? Like, answer my question. Like that makes it look like I'm the asshole. Like I'm just trying to answer questions as much as I can. Now listen, I am the asshole for calling you out, but in that circumstance, I will learn from it. But don't say like I don't answer questions, right? I'm here every night. I try my best. There's a lot of you and one of me, and we only have so much time to do so, right? So we understand, right? There's no harm, no foul. I don't mean anything negative against it. I'm just saying, like, don't call me out on shit that doesn't exist. That's all I'm saying. J Bake Cakes sends in a question. Says, Jones neighbors for Nico. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hold up. What do you have at running back? You have JT Bijan. Okay. So in the long term, I think you probably are going to want to have the depth. Look, here's the issue, J Bakes Cakes. If you trade away Aaron Jones today, okay, Bijan Robinson has an upcoming bye week, and so does JT. So who's going to fill in for them? The answer would be Aaron Jones. So probably keeping them is most likely the best way to get to your playoff position, assuming you're not already in a position to where you're significantly ahead of everybody. Maybe if you're 9-1, you can take it. Otherwise, you don't. Alan says, chat, do I pull the trigger on Tyreek Hill for Marvin Harrison and Rashad White? Tyreek Hill for Marvin Harrison. Jeez Louise. Depends on how bad you need that running back, because I think it could hurt. Let's see. You were spot on suggesting Kyle Pitts over DJ Moore. I mean, yeah, DJ Moore was not hard to avoid last week, and I think we just have to continue to avoid him on the dawn. Let's see here. Mike says Calvin Ridley or Devontae Adams. For this week, I'd rather play Devontae Adams. I still have a vendetta against Will Levis that I do not want to let up until he can prove me on a consecutive basis that he's going to be relevant. Let's see here. Cheese on Top says drop Worthy and stash the Cardinals. Yeah, I mean, look, Worthy's not startable unless we have some sort of, like, even in the best matchup, a couple weeks ago against Tampa Bay, he wasn't really a in-tuned option. There were a couple opportunities down the field that he had, but again, he's just not startable. Isaac says, I had to take a break from football this year, but I'm glad to see you're still posting. Every time, Isaac. Thank you. Appreciate it, my man. Gerardo says, I need a top 2 of Ridley, Dell, Tillman, Allen. Need top 2 of Ridley, Dell, Tillman, Allen. Okay, so... Okay, I'm going to assume that Allen is Keenan Allen. Can't start him. No, thank you. As for the rest of those options, I'll probably play Ridley and Tillman first. Thank you. Let's see here. Full PPR, Dobbins for Stevenson. I don't know about that. I don't know if I... Look, here's the thing. A couple weeks ago, and I'm still on the same kind of approach, I'm not trading for Stevenson. I don't really want to have any sort of correlation or any sort of risk applied with the potential that revolves around the New England Patriots offense. So quite frankly, I'm probably just going to sit in the position where I'm pretty comfortably avoiding that. So as of right now, I'd rather have Dobbins. I don't like his schedule, but neither do I like the overall potential of what Ramondre can potentially present upcoming. Let's see here. Eugenio says, would Neighbors for Otton be a good trade? I don't think so. If you're going to be trading away Neighbors, the potential which he has rest of the way, again, they're both on bye week, so it makes sense to potentially trade them from one another. I'd rather just go after a higher tier player. Like, I'd rather go after, well, now that I think about it. No, I still wouldn't make that trade. If you're going to trade away Neighbors, you're going to have a lot of wide receiver depth to be able to kind of justify that in my mind. Jacoby Myers or Ladd McConkey rest of the season. Depends on who's playing quarterback for the Raiders. We'll know that by probably tomorrow based on what the first team reps look like. All the beat writers for the Raiders will report that, and once we have that information on that, if it's still Gardner Minshew, I'd probably say it's Myers. If not, then we'll go with McConkey because I don't really trust Desmond Ridder in that circumstance. Lockie says, do you think Harbaugh and Greg Roman going to unlock Herbert's running game going forward? He's breaking ankles on Sunday. I mean, look, I think they'll probably... Very similar in which they utilized, if you go back all the way to the San Francisco 49ers days in which Harbaugh and Greg Roman were in that instance, Alex Smith had himself a couple rushing games there, right? Where he had himself opportunities on the read options. Are they going to utilize him as much as they did with Alex Smith? Probably not. But again, it's always in the realm of possibility. I don't think it's enough to where he is going to be a consistent option based on the rushing upside, though. I think it's very seldom. I think it was only done because of the goal line positioning. Tillman, Sutton, Myers, or Devontae. As of right now, I'm still playing Devontae number 1. Now that I look at this across the board, it probably goes like Devontae, Sutton, Tillman, Myers in that order, Donkey. Sam says Najee, Chubb, or Alex Madison in a full PPR week 11. As of right now, man, that one's not easy. I don't know what to expect from the Raiders, honestly. If it's going to be Desmond Ridder, I don't like the idea of playing Madison there as much as I would in terms of potentially having Gardner there because I think they'd be in a far better position to succeed and have scoring chances. So for right now, I'll say Najee. If they do say it's going to be Gardner Minshew, at that point, I would play Madison. But I really do not like the potential of taking on the Baltimore Ravens run-stop defense, even in the case of Najee, who's been playing incredibly well as of late for fantasy purposes. Ross Wong sends in a question. Thank you, Ross. Smith versus Washington or Tillman versus New Orleans? Yeah, I'd rather play Tillman versus New Orleans. That New Orleans secondary is in complete shambles. They've got way too many injuries in this circumstance. Thoughts on Collins' chances playing this week? Should be able to play. I mean, based on everything that I've read earlier today, he is expected to play. Again, he practiced last week on Friday, so that is a really good sign in terms of his overall potential. That's why we thought that he could play on Sunday night. Flipside Fishing sends in a question. Says in a 10-team full PPR, we have Tyreek Hill is available on waivers. Somebody got really pissed on your league. Grab and drop one or pass. Yeah, you have to drop one. Absolutely. What do you have? You have Hawkinson and Laporta, Quentin Johnston, Jameson Williams, Brian Thomas, and Tillman, Garrett Wilson. Yeah, Quentin Johnston takes the axe. And if it's a fab league, you're unloading the entire clip. If you have the number 1 waiver, then congratulations, you just won your league because you picked up Tyreek Hill in exchange for Quentin Johnston. Sounds good to me. Easy E sends in a question. Easy, where is it? Says half PPR. I'm an 8-2 half P. Okay, 8-2 team. I'm concerned about my wide receivers for rest of season. Any suggestions? My team is quarterback Jalen Hurts. Okay, good to go. Wide receivers are London, D-Hop, Adams, Waddle, Mooney. Okay, so pretty much Waddle is your biggest concern there. Running backs are Mixon, McCaffrey, Chase Brown, Tracy, Bucky Irving. Okay, really, I don't have any concerns with your team. I think wide receiver is your biggest question mark, but at the current moment, like, really, you can utilize Tyrone Tracy to be able to reassure that position. Like, you can take Tyrone Tracy and Mooney and potentially go and try to get a better tiered wide receiver in exchange. And additionally, you'd be getting rid of one of the Atlanta wide receivers, so you don't have to worry about playing two wide receivers from Atlanta every week and potentially them kind of cannibalizing each other's value in that circumstance. So I think that's probably the best plan of action in that circumstance. Moving Tracy, moving Mooney. You could theoretically move another option, a wide receiver like a D-Hop with Tracy, and see if you can go get a wide receiver like a Mike Evans and or potentially a DK Metcalf of sorts to give you a little bit more solidified value in that circumstance going forward. Ferguson or Kincaid rest of the season, standard scoring. Lockie, depends on whether or not Kincaid's injury is serious enough to where it's going to hold him out for multiple weeks. We'll have to wait and see. Patrick says Tillman for Reed. Yes, I'd rather have Reed rest the season for sure. Brandon says trade away Jacobs, Myers for Cook and Debo. Yes, I think you kind of have to. I think the value is too potent in terms of what you get in Debo in comparison to Myers there. Green Screen says, I'm 7-3. Do I sell CD? You should. I mean, if you can. If you can't, again, you're still going to be fine. He'll still be a wide receiver too in those instances. My other wide receivers are Nico, Amari, and D-Hop. Yeah, again, like I was mentioning earlier, if you can move him in exchange for a Mike Evans, a DK Metcalf, a Terry McLaurin, a Jaden Reed, let's do so. If you can get him, if you can get a Debo Samuel for it, fantastic. But in the event in which somebody's going to try to give you a BTJ, not interested, right? Or if someone's going to try to give you, let's think of a wide receiver that hasn't, like if someone's going to try to give you DJ Moore, like, I mean, what are we doing? Like we're not interested in that kind of stuff right now. We want actual potent consistency. Someone's going to try to give you Jacoby Myers with the uncertainty of that offense, not interested. We want actual solidified value because we're still going to get value out of CeeDee Lamb. If it wasn't for the fact that the Dallas Cowboys weren't closing the windows or putting on the shutters in order to make sure that the receivers could see, he scores a touchdown and he's perfectly fine last week. Trill sends in a question, says, traded Marvin Harrison for Pollard. Wide receivers are Wilson, Zay, and Tillman. I don't really love the idea of Pollard rest of the way. When I look at this upcoming schedule for the Titans, specifically considering we're going to have Tyjae Spears healthy rest of the way, when I look at the upcoming schedule, like I don't have an issue with their matchup against Washington, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Indianapolis. Actually, you know what? They have a decent schedule. As long as Will Levis can be a decent quarterback, they're going to be in negative game scripts every week. It's just a matter of, are they going to allow for Pollard to be that 16 to 20 touch guy like he was earlier this season, or are they going to completely siphon his touches and give it to, Tyjae Spears 50-50 rest of the way? This most recent week, it was 13 versus 10 touches, which is, in a 54 to 46% snap percentage. So it looks like a more of a 50-50 backfield, which again, if you're only going to get half of the touches, you're only getting half of the fantasy points, which I don't love. But their upcoming schedule looks pretty decent in the long term. Let's see here. Chalateco says, trade Tillman and Gibbs for Bijan. Probably not, no. I could understand why you would do it. If you showed me your team and your wide receivers are stacked, like I'm talking about, we have 3 players that are in the top 24 and you're never going to start Tillman and nobody has an upcoming bye week, then I'd say, okay, sure, we're making a pretty huge upgrade at running back there. I have no questions regarding it. But if you showed me in your wide receiver position is already pretty threatened by upcoming bye weeks and the lack of consistency, I'd be really concerned making that deal, especially with what Tillman could potentially provide. Let's see here. Alfredo says, drop Mason for a defense. I would. Or drop Garendo. I'd drop both. I'm going to be honest. If I was to drop one of the two, I mean, again, I would prefer to keep Garendo, but that's just my own personal opinion on the matter. But yeah, if you needed a defense for the future, for sure do it. DK or Tyreek Hill is my wide receiver 2 this week. Okay, look, if I look at the history of DK Metcalf versus the 49ers, he has not played well against them since 2022, and it was a playoff game. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll mention this on tomorrow's episode in regards to wide receiver rankings, he has scored less than 10 points in a half PPR in 5 of the last 6 games against San Francisco. They really bottle him up. Now, the last time against them earlier this season in week 6, he played relatively well. He had a lot of opportunities kind of fall through his hands and even had a touchdown called back due to illegal formation because for some reason Kenneth Walker wanted to keep moving instead of just standing still. Killed one of my fantasy legs of a entry via Underdog. But in the circumstance, he doesn't have the greatest overall weeks typically against the 49ers. So I'd be pretty concerned rolling him out there in this circumstance based on matchup alone. Schnabel says full PPR, Jaden Reed or Terry McLaurin rest of the season. I'd be hard-pressed not to keep McLaurin in that circumstance. He's been playing far too well. Juwan sends in a question. Or Juan says, my team is Burrow, Hall, Chase Brown, Jefferson, London, Chubb, Ferguson. My bench is Evans and Singletary. Picking up Hill, Davis, Estime. Do I need to make any moves? I mean, look, as a whole, Burrow doesn't move. Chase Brown doesn't move. Hall is fine. Jefferson's great. London's great. Chubb, I think, is the issue that I can foresee in the upcoming future, especially if it's a full PPR. Ferguson, again, could be an issue in the future, but Evans is great in terms of... Yeah, so look, if I'm looking towards the future, I'm trying to upgrade that RB3, and I'm potentially trying to upgrade that tight end. Maybe trading for... If somebody has a second tight end on roster, like they have Hawkinson plus Laporta or something of that nature, you might want to go and knock on their door and see what it would require in order to get something like that in return. Because if Cooper Rush and or Trey Lance are not going to be sustainable options enough to help Ferguson be of fantasy relevant value, and you have to just hit the waivers in order to pick up something like that exchange, I think at that point I'm probably looking to try to trade first and foremost. How would I make a move? Again, depends on if they need a tight end in return. If they do, then you can't make the trade. Otherwise, you could theoretically take Evans and go trade for a tight end and a wide receiver combo. Otherwise, hold on, wait another week, give the Dallas Cowboys a chance and see what they could potentially produce. If they're solid enough in their overall efforts, then you can keep it as is and not have to worry about it. Chalateco sends in a follow-up, says, my wide receivers are Lamb, Drake, Moore, Thomas, and Leggett. Look, here's the thing. I'm going to be totally honest here, Chalateco. I actually do believe that Tillman is probably more valuable than Moore and Thomas and Leggett rest of the way. Now, is he more valuable than Lamb? To be determined. More valuable than Drake? No. So there's a conversation where he's your number 2 wide receiver rest of the way. I think that's a legitimate conversation to be had. So I think I probably keep in this current circumstance. All right. So like I've mentioned in the past, guys, every night when I come on here, I typically try to keep it between an hour and a half. We're an hour and 21 minutes in the live stream. I think I'm going to call it there. I appreciate y'all. Again, I'm going to go prepare for tomorrow's video, take care of all that kind of jazz. I appreciate y'all coming through, asking questions. Again, outside of that, we're good to go. I'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m., same time, for an hour and a half-ish, answering questions. I'll be back with wide receiver rankings, top 36 tomorrow. Shazy, getting after your ass was probably not the right move. That's on me. If you're still here, I apologize. But outside of that, I think we're good to go. I appreciate y'all. Much love. Gets Knowledge sends in a question, says, is Jordan Mason droppable? The only reason I believe Jordan Mason is droppable is because I don't really feel comfortable with his shoulder injury. We're probably in a position where even if Christian McCaffrey was, going to miss any sort of spectrum of time, it's probably going to be Garando that kind of fills in. That's the only thing I'm thinking. So at the moment, I'd probably lean in the direction of, yeah, he is droppable under the assumption that, again, you have a Garando on roster and you're trying to hold in for Christian McCaffrey. If you don't even have McCaffrey, again, I don't think he gets injured the rest of the way. I guess it's a decent insurance policy, but again, with the shoulder concerns that Jordan Mason has, I don't really trust them at the moment. All right, a couple more questions. Shahir says, I'm currently 8-2. Consists of Allen, Kamara, Jones, Hunt, Jamar. Should I make any trades? I mean, looking at your team as a whole, Ingram is pretty solid at tight end, regardless of who plays quarterback. Josh Allen, Kamara, Jones, Hunt, Jamar, DK Metcalf, Harrison. I mean, look, unless you're trying to specifically set up yourself for success in the fantasy playoffs, like I'm taking Aaron Jones right now and I'm trading him for James Conner. That's what I would do. I'd go find the James Conner team, assuming, or even maybe even move him for Josh Jacobs. That's what I'm looking to do. Those are the two kind of players that I would want at running back. As for wide receiver, if I can, I'm trying to trade for George Pickens. Going to be very difficult, but you could do it considering the depth you currently have on roster. Otherwise, for sure, keep Harrison. Otherwise, again, you don't really need to move. Quarterback solid, tight end is solid. Everything else is relatively solid, but you could make slight upgrades in the circumstance. Luke C says, in a PPR, rank rest of season, Estime, Warren, Pearsall, Bateman, Ray Davis, Javonte Williams. I mean, look, none of those running backs are going to rank highly. Like, literally none of them. Like, the most valuable player of that group is probably Bateman 1, Pearsall 2. I would probably venture to say Warren 3, Estime 4, Javonte Williams 5, Rave Davis 6. And then for your second question, is Javonte Williams droppable rest of season? Yes, I've dropped him in every single league in which I've had him on roster. So yes, I would say that he is droppable. Then Ibrahim says, Breece Hall for Jacobs. I would be willing to trade for Jacobs. Absolutely. If you can get that, go for it. Let's see here. We had a question from Nikhil who says, I have Jones, White, JT, JK, Tank, and Brooks as my running backs, and I have Devontae Smith, Deontay Johnson, Pickens as my wide receivers. I think I desperately need a wide receiver. I got offered Aaron Jones for Ladd and Shakir. Here's the thing. Giving away Jones in order to get that in return is not worth it. Like, if I'm moving Aaron Jones, I'm trying to get a 14-point wide receiver in return. I'm trying to get back a Terry McLaurin, a Jaden Reed, a Zay Flowers. That is what I want in return. I'm not going to settle for Ladd McConkey and Shakir. Not interested in that. So try to look for the potential of getting somebody, not a 2-for-1, a specific 1-for-1 in which you are getting a wide receiver in return that is worth the value of Aaron Jones. Shakir could be worth the value, but again, that's under the assumption that, of course, Kincaid is not going to return and there's more injury history or potential concerns with Keon Coleman in the future. Scrolling down here, a couple more questions. Denon, what did you end up saying? Says Discord. Okay, Denon, 1 second here. Patrick says Tillman or Devontae Smith. I'd rather have Tillman. Beaver says, okay, thank you. Anderson says, what are your top 5 best quarterback and wide receiver stacks rest of season? Stacks are completely different. Look, I'm not really someone who subscribes within stacks. I always want to play the best players at every position, so stacking really doesn't seem like it's much of value. I'd say the most valuable stack at the current moment is Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. Outside of that, I'd say I'd have to look into it in terms of the rest of season and where it kind of sits. But yeah, I'm not really one that I'm not really in tune with stacking per se. Who in my team would you trade for Marvin Harrison? I have a trade deadline in week 11. Or am I good? If you're trading for Marvin Harrison, at this point, again, you would try to move like Pollard. Well, you could, look, Mooney, Downs, and Pollard all have representative value isolated. You could theoretically take a wide receiver running back duo between the two, between the three of them, like take Mooney and Pollard and go get Marvin Harrison and one other piece from their team. I don't know what their team looks like then, but we could talk about it on Discord in a moment. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all. That's where I'm going to call it. I'm going to cue the music. Have a great rest of your night. I appreciate y'all coming through. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Have a nice good night. Later.